Yo, what I do, guys, and welcome back to another video. Now, in today's video, we're going to be taking a closer look at Yareli because as of today, she just got her Prime variant. So, lovely stuff for all of the people who have been waiting for that. Now, inside this build, and for today's video, we're going to be going for a run and gun build, which means we will be using this augment here. Now, there are some benefits to this augment, but there's also some cons to this augment, which I'll go ahead and go over a little bit later. And it really depends whether or not you like using her second ability, which again, we'll go over a little bit later. So, I'm going to go and say this as loudly and as clearly as I possibly can. This is for people who typically either, whether you like her, then this is going to be great for you. If you dislike her, it's going to be a nice solid enough build that if you want to use her in Steel Path, or if you see her in Elite Deep Arc Media or Elite Temporal Arc Media, or even Deviri Paradox, and you're just looking for a good build that can go and get you through the content of what you're doing, it will have really good survivability and it will have really good damage output with utility. If that sounds good to you, then this is going to be the concept of it, but we're going to be working purely towards secondary weapons. There's also pros and cons towards that because of her passive versus Arcane Enervate, which I guess if I can remember, I'll get to that topic a little bit later, talking about how that works as well. But without further ado, enough yapping for me. Let's just go and jump into the build and show you what we're working with right now, okay? So, Yareli Prime's out. Here's what we're going to be doing. Now, it's a run and gun build, and we're going to be catering mostly towards what is going to be her passive over here. So her passive states that Yareli gains 200% critical chance for secondary weapons when she's been moving for at least 1.5 seconds. As long as you're moving around, you end up getting 200% critical chance. Now, this can basically be on foot, or this can be if you're riding and using her K-Drive, her second ability, Merulina. Either way, so long as you're not static and you're holding still, so long as you are essentially moving, that kinetic movement, you are going to be getting critical chance. Problem with Enervate, but sorry, we'll get to that in a bit. Anyway, so that's what we're going to be using, that 200%, right? And we're going to be going for secondaries. So from here onwards, what I want to go ahead and do is, because it's a runner and gunner, I'm going to make sure that I go and bring in a damage buffing ability. I want to make sure that when I go ahead and shoot, I'm going to be benefiting damage from something. Now, on screen, there's going to be a few subsumable abilities that you can go and choose from. My advice would be I'd be taking more of an on-hit subsumable. So that would be anything between Zaku's Sartor's Whisper, which has got a damage instance, extra damage instance on hit, Mirage's Eclipse, which is multiplicative towards base damage on hit, and then we've also got this one isn't, well, this is just Grendel's Nourish, which is viral amplification, but you are going to need status to complement to go ahead and get more out of those viral procs. Okay, so keep that in mind. Although it's a critical build and it's on here, I am also gonna, if I do run Nourish here, and if you do run Nourish, you also want relatively decent-ish or high-ish status chance on your secondary weapon as well. If you're not running that and you don't want to go run that, just go with Eclipse or go with Zarda's Whisper. Okay, both of those will be completely fine. They're a little bit more reliable for just a raw overall damage. Now, you can also go ahead and go for Rhino's Roar, but it's more of a dot related thing. So if you are dotting and you want to go and double dip and get on hit multiplicative damage and also have that that Rhino Roar faction damage apply to the dot as well, consider Rhino's Roar. All right, that's what you will be doing there. So my choice and what I went with is I dropped her third ability, which is called Aqua Blades. Overall, this ability on its own doesn't do a tremendous amount of work, especially when I'm going to be running and gunning. I'm going to be killing lots of things from like a medium range. This is just too short range for what we're going to be doing. So unfortunately, it doesn't scale range, so it's going to be a little bit irrelevant to what we're going to be doing. And I'm not going to be using this augment because I do not want to keep rebuilding it. So we're going to take Aqua Blades out. And again, I'm now going to be using the Grendel Nourish. This is going to go in and allow my secondary weapon, which you'll go and see a little bit later. I don't have to run viral on my secondary weapon. I've now outsourced viral to this. And if I do want to go and spam any abilities in here, which is mostly going to be my fourth, which we'll get to in a moment, then Nourish is going to go ahead and supply me with a good amount of energy. So Nourish is going to go ahead and be good for energy economy, but it's also going to be good for viral debuff, damage amplification, 325% at 10 stacks, 100% at 1 stack. I mean, you can't really complain about that. That's a lot of bonus damage. So that's what we're going to be doing. That's where I'm going with it. Okay, so that's where we're going to be going from here. So as we could imagine, those are going to be like the two main things. But because we've also got this ability here, Riptide, I wouldn't say it's the best of all grouping abilities, but it is a grouping ability regardless. And if we can go and group, then there's no harm in technically grouping things up. Here's the thing. For my build, this is a little bit optional. So although my range is 199% right now, I want to kind of just tell you that that's not what you need to go ahead and do, and I can go ahead and change the overextended in here regardless. You're going to have to pick and choose here. This build has a lot of flexibility, so I'm just going to try and be as absolutely clear as I can with where you can change things, all right? So please keep that in mind. Range can easily flex. That overextended mod can easily be taken out for more strength and more overall damage accumulation. But yes, we can go ahead and do grouping and nuking if we want to. We've got a weapon buffer over here. C Snares is essentially damage vulnerability. I know my camera's in the way. If I just go and pop me up here really quickly and then go and show you there. Right at the very bottom, that scales off ability strength. That is 294% right there as well. We're not really looking at it for the damage. Now, the good thing about C Snares is that it does go ahead and suspend and lift enemies up, which then makes it a lot easier if you're going to do headshot builds or you want to go and hit weak points or anything else like that, which also goes pretty well with one of my Arcanes, which I'll go over in a bit. But yes, that damage vulnerability is also multiplicative to elemental, to faction, to whatever, you know, damage. So C Snares are also just going to be an extra good thing for you to go and have if the enemy's not dying quick enough. C Snare them. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about the second ability and the augment, and then we can kind of talk about the mods and everything that we're doing here. So we now got Merulina. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. When it comes towards Merulina, it's kind of like mustard. You either like it or you don't. There's very little and in between. So here's the thing. It's not Merulina's fault, but the reality of it is I'm going to talk from the people who don't like it. I feel like I can speak for a majority of people because we've had a bit of this conversation before. If you do like it, please don't take it as a personal attack. Just please understand for the people who dislike it. Unfortunately, the reality is K-Drive is just a little bit clunky. There's nothing against it by all means, but unfortunately, it's very limited to which tile sets it can genuinely work very well in. For example, it's not fantastic in infested tile sets where there's a lot of growths and spurts coming out of the ground, so you can get caught on like the tiniest like little plant leaf or twig, and then it ruins your entire flow of momentum. So in bigger open worlds and bigger tile sets, it works a lot nicer. Definitely inside like more kind of Grenier or even more so Corpus areas, which is where Fortuna is, right? So those types of Corpus outdoor tile sets, you'll see that Merulina actually goes pretty well there. But that's going to be my issue, is that unfortunately I don't want to go and have something where it doesn't work everywhere. I'd rather have something where it does work everywhere. That's the purpose of this build, is to be generic, right? So if you like Merulina, what's kind of cool about this is you can essentially go for a different augment than what I'm currently running. This is the flexibility. So this one, if you like riding her and if you want to go ahead and get more out of using her, if you go ahead and kill an enemy with a C Snare, so if they have the C Snare applied to them and you go and kill the enemy, it will then heal Merulina, which is nice, but then you also go ahead and gain 200% reload speed and fire rate when you go ahead and kill them for 20 seconds. This also synergizes with the 200% critical chance that you get in there. So you see how they're all 3 increments of 200%. Synergizes really, really nicely. And again, it will just work really well when you're riding and going around loony shooting. Problem is, like I said, not everybody likes that. This is where loyal Merulina comes in. Merulina can still now be used, but she will join you as like a side companion. You'll still go ahead and get your damage reduction, and you'll still go ahead and be protected, which is really nice. Even on cast and decast of her, you'll still get the 4 seconds of invulnerability. That means the moment I cast her, I get 4 seconds of invulnerability. You do not need things like rolling guard or anything else like that. It's a very good way of surviving, giving you iframes, plenty of iframes, similar to like what you would do with Wisp and her seconds with a Wisp ability. So if you go ahead and get like a heat proc or something else like that on you, you can always go ahead and just press 2. Now the idea is that when you're on Merulina, you're supposed to go ahead and get full status immunity. Unfortunately, you don't get status immunity to particular knockdowns, which is where this will come in, but I guess I'll explain that a little bit later. But anyways, what else, I'm getting carried away. What else loyal Merulina also goes ahead and does is that she follows you, and then she casts her C Snare on, casts a C Snare on nearby enemies with a 2-second cooldown. Here's the issue with this part. Number 1, when I go ahead and cast C-Snares, I can cast, I believe it's up to 5 of them, which is great. So I can seek multiple enemies, off I go, lovely jubbly. When she casts C-Snares, she only casts 1 of them. and it's on a cooldown, and that cooldown can be unfortunately modified, which is the part that I dislike. So this cooldown scales off ability efficiency, which basically just means, but my build is a run and gun build, which means I really like my setup, is it's a 3.1 second cooldown now. Now here's the thing, if you wanted her to go ahead and shoot it more often, you would need 175% ability efficiency. So you're gonna need a 5 out of 6 what is it, 5 out of 6, sorry, so 4 out of 5 streamline, 4 out of 5 streamline, and a 4 out of 5 I can't talk. 4 out of 5 streamline and a 4 out of 5 fleeting is going to be your best return for it without hurting anything else. Cap yourself at 175% efficiency, and she will now shoot every 0.5 seconds. Even then, I personally don't like that. I would much rather just take the fact that she becomes a companion next to me, I still get the damage reduction, and I can uncast her and recast her without having to ride her and get the 4-second invulnerability. Plus, I get some status immunity in other areas while she's at my side. To me, I like that. I'm the running gunner. I want to be able to bullet jump, move, and keep my flow. So this is what I'm saying by the flexibility. Hopefully you understand. I shouldn't yap too much more, but that's what's going on there with Merulina, all right? Now, because of that, and because of what's going on here, yes, there's a lot of flexibility. Normally, I start off my videos and I'll say, you go duration, you go rate, you go this. This one, it really depends on what you want. So this is the nice part out of it. So if you want more damage and more overall damage return, the damage vulnerability from Snares scales with ability strength. The Merulina health pool scales with ability strength. The Nourish damage increase, the viral added damage towards your weapons, scales with ability strength. But we don't really care so much for the overall ability strength of Riptide. It doesn't do a tremendous amount of damage. We mostly want it for the group and nuke if we take a secondary weapon for nuking. Now, if you like that, ability strength. If you don't want that, then it'd be ability range again, like I stated, but it's got to be more for the Riptide per se. I mean, this has got really good range on it. This goes up to 60 meters and they can go ahead and seek, which is absolutely fantastic. But for the most part, again, if you like to group and nuke, then you've got this option. If you don't want to group and nuke, you simply do that. Now I get more strength, but I still can keep the range setup. You will go ahead and notice, yes, when it comes towards efficiency and my build, where's flow, where's streamline, where's equilibrium, which are like big promotions that I tend to go over, I don't use any of them here because I actually saw all of this in my Archon Shards. When we get to the Archon Shards, you might have to go and flex them depending on what you want, but otherwise, yes, if you want a prime flow, chuck a prime flow in. If you want an equilibrium, it will synergize with your KPM and you killing. If you want to go and put a streamline in, put a streamline in. Efficiency is what you guys make of it. I fixed all of mine in my Archon Shards, which I'll go and show you a bit later, okay? So yes, this mod here and this position here, completely flexible. Please take what you want here. Whatever you want. You want redirection and more survival, take it. Take whatever you want here. Okay, this is like the one true flexibility part right now. But even if I don't typically use Riptide that often, if I don't, because it might depend on the weapon that I've got, what I do like about it is that I don't really feel like I'm losing from the build. I don't feel like I'm losing lots of ability strength if I go ahead and hurt my ability strength with this and then not lose Riptide. I'm still going to melt. I'm still going to do a lot of damage regardless, okay? So from there onwards, I've got the ability duration, I've got the blind rage for the maximum amount of strength, but the unfortunate return towards efficiency. I've got no problem with that because I can fix it. If you do have a problem with that, do not run this mod if you can't fix the your energy return. Transient Fortitude does go ahead and hurt the duration, unfortunately, which is mostly going to be more for things like my Nourish subsumable or whatever subsumable that you've got. But the good thing about Nourish is that it's recastable. If you run things like Praedos, it's not recastable, so it's up to you if you want to go and run this as well. Again, lots of flexibility. Narrow-minded is also going to go and hurt range here, but it gives me a lot of duration. I like the duration here, but as you can see, I don't need a tremendous amount. This is what I mean by the flexibility, and even overextended. You'll see how this is like a pro, a con, a pro, a con, a pro, a con, and a pro and a con. But yeah, all four of them together work really, really well in tangent with what I'm doing. I don't really feel like I'm missing anything. If anything, I don't really feel like I need anything. Like, I'll just walk through the tile set and I become this absolute monstrous. So I've got no problem with that, right? Now, if you do need to go and change things and flex things as you want to, please go ahead and do so. Now, again, range over here, just a little bit. Now, what's also nice about this one is energy spent on abilities is converted to shields. If you can get any of these types of mods in here, whether it be Augur Secrets or Augur Message as well, these can always be good mods to go and chuck in if you do also want to go and get a little bit of shield gating on return of whenever you go and cast an ability. Keep in mind though, I can always just go and double tap Merulina if I need to, but for the most part, I should just be killing enemies with my build. So most of my survival comes from me killing enemies. If not, creeping and nuking, which slows them down. If not, Merulina damage reduction. Get the idea. There's a lot of like extra variables in here. If you do need to go and put more survival in, please add more survival at your own accord. So from there, what I can go to do is, and it just depends, as for an aura mod, my advice would be essentially between kind of 3 that I would normally go with. Worthy Camaraderie, it basically means squad receives 75% weak point critical chance, which is nice when you theme the idea that I'm going critical anyways, but yes, it does require me to go ahead and hit the weak points in order to go and benefit from this, whereas this is just overall I can shoot their toes and still go ahead and get it. If you wanted that survival like I spoke about earlier, you can go with the Brief Respite, then you can go and just spam 1 if you want to and go and get a bit of shield gating back, and then also 1 just adds towards the crowd control, so it helps your survival. You can go and run Brief Respite. If not, you can also go ahead and run things like Grow and Power, which again on status effect, which if you go for the Grendel's Nourish, or if you go for the Zaku's Stardust Whisper, where you'll also go ahead and do Voids, and both of these status chance scales off, sorry, the viral and the void requires for your secondary weapon to scale its status chance. Then when you do go and apply these and you go and proc it, you go ahead and get extra ability strength to your other abilities for, or whatever really you go ahead and cast within the next 6 seconds. So you can go and get a bigger amount of buff if you wanted to, if you want more strength. I don't really typically need a lot of strength on the build. Honestly, the more that I play it, the more that I realize I don't need an awful lot of everything. I just kind of typically take it as a runner and gunner and as a buffer, and it kind of just works. So then there's the Prime Chauffeur, and like I said, ideally when you are supposed to be running things, if you are on Merulina, do not run this, just take this off. Whatever you want to go and put in there is up to you. You can go and put things like Cut and Drift, Power Drift, Preparation, any of those go ahead and work. If you want to go and use other ones, be my guest. Flexibility is key. But I go and run the Prime Chauffeur because unfortunately I still go ahead and get knocked down, even though she's supposed to go and still add that status immunity towards whether, even if you're not riding her. It's a whole can of worms. It's just one thing that maybe could be bugged or forgotten about. I don't know if they did go and patch it or fix it, but yes, that's basically what's going on there. Now, I've yapped a lot. Let's go and get towards the Arcanes. Now, as for the Arcanes, this is, again, going to be very catered. I would honestly go and say the Arcanes are probably more like the bigger argument. See, a lot of the mods that you go for, honestly, take whatever poison you want. If you want to go more range, you want to go more shape, sure. But here it comes with the Arcanes. They're quite competitive against each other because there's quite a few Arcanes I could go and run, and all of them work genuinely pretty well. But I've settled on these 2 for now, but I will explain one of them doesn't work with 2 things. So, Arcane Pistolier. Arcane Pistolier states on headshot kill, 60% chance for 102% ammo efficiency for 12 seconds. This basically means when I go ahead and kill them with a headshot, there is a 60% chance that I have unlimited ammo for 12 seconds. Now, as you could imagine, you pair that with high fire rate and critical, yeah, I'm going to absolutely be slapping, which is what I'll go and show you with a weapon in a moment. So this works really, really well. Now, not only does that synergize, because it's headshot kill, that would synergize with, again, weak point kind of overall kills, and I can suspend enemies in the air for easy headshots. You see how that synergizes together? Here's the thing. If you run Incarnon weapons and you go ahead and evolve the Incarnon weapon, Arcane Pistolier doesn't do anything towards the Incarnon charge. And if you're grouping a nuking with Riptide, Arcane Pistolier is so much harder to go ahead and get the efficiency when things are kind of just being swirled around this like water vortex that you go and see here. So as you could imagine, this can be flexed, but for the build that I'm typically showing you today, I would much rather Arcane Pistolier because I really enjoy that ammo efficiency side, which is why I typically, like I said, this can be flexed for me, but it's up to you how you want to go and use this. If you don't want to go and use that, your other things could be things like Arcane Precision. I know I just spoke about headshot, so yes, but this can work with Incarnon weapons. It would have no issue. With the Riptides, I think you might want to just apply it beforehand and then you could go, but 300% damage to secondary on hit. You can go for things like Molt Augmented over here, where whenever you go and get kills, up to 250 kills, you can get 60% ability strength. You go for things like Molt Efficiency, which is, well, your shields are active. You gain 6% ability duration up to a maximum of 36%. It's going to help your overall ability duration if you wanted to. That's also going to be very nice. Go ahead and chuck in here. You can go for Arcane Avenger. Now, when you're damaged, there's a 21% chance for 21% chance for 45% critical chance for 12 seconds. Here's the thing, that's going to require you to go and get damaged. What you could go ahead and do if you wanted to was going back towards the aura mods. If I go and chuck an unranked combat discipline up here, whenever I go and kill an enemy, I lose 1 health. That's great. For every time I'm losing 1 health, there's a 21% chance I'm taking damage, but then during that damage, there's a 21% chance for this to activate. This is final absolute additive critical chance. It'll be at the very, very end of your sum. But since this is going to be multiplicative, you can kind of get the best of both worlds. But again, it's still going to require you to go ahead and have a decent amount of base critical chance to go and get a lot out of this. Otherwise, the return that you get is quite low. So you can take that route as well. That does go and help. This should hopefully take you into new critical tiers. It really just depends on how you're modding your secondary weapon. But yes, you can go and do that, all right? I might have put math on the screen here as well, so I don't know. Editor me would have decided. Anyways, so yes, you can see that there's quite a few flexibilities, but the other one that I don't like flexing is going to be this one here. It just basically states Archon Velocity on critical hit. As you could imagine, we're a critical build, 9% chance for 120% fire rate towards pistols. Here's the thing, that fire rate can synergize really nicely when I have unlimited ammo. If you really think that through, and that also scales of critical, and that also scales of hitting something that's essentially stationary to go. You see how like that synergizes? Again, it means I won't get a lot out of my Riptide here and there. I may not go and use it, but it is what it is. And Incarnon weapons. So I know that was a mouthful to go ahead and go over. Thank you guys for bearing me with that. Let's go ahead and get over a secondary weapon that I would go and use with her. I'm going to go and use the dual Coda Torxica. Now, real quickly, you can use whatever you want to, all right? Just remember, if you are going to go for the critical chance build and you're not running secondary Enervate, then please go and keep in mind that you do need a good amount of base critical chance. Now, the dual Coda Torxica is going to be a build like this as follows. What I'm going to go and do is I'm going to target the critical straight away. So I'm going to go and bring the Prime Pistol Gambit in here. You can also go ahead and run the Creeping Bullseye if you want to. It's all cool. I'm just going to go ahead and throw this in here because there's not that much of a difference and it can go and hurt my fire rate. And I just want more fire rate for more overall DPS. Okay, so that's going to be 187%. Remember, Yareli's passive is 200%. Then I'm going to go and just put a little bit of critical damage in here. From there, what I am going to go and do is I'm going to run Blast on this to go ahead and help the fact that I can go and add a little bit of AoE towards it. Keep in mind, Blast is going to scale really well off of Viral, which is where Grendel's Nourish comes in, right? So we're going to go and make sure that those Blast ticks do a lot more damage on top of what we're doing. And now this also adds a little bit more AoE to a weapon that's not really considered AoE. Galvanized Shot, since I'm going to be applying 3 elements here, plus the Nourish is going to be 4 elements, so I can go and scale my overall damage. Overall scaling multi-shot and fire rate, and then because I'm going down this critical chance route with Yareli's passive, with Prime Pistol Gambit, and with the Galvanized Crosshairs, I will be getting over tier 2 critical chance. I'll put the math on the screen, and I'll get a chance of tier 3. If you would like to change that or do something different, you can go ahead and do so. But in order for me to go and get more out of this, I do have to ADS at all points because this gives me 120% critical chance whilst I'm aiming. It does go ahead and give me more after it, but it still requires me to be ADSing, all right? Now, because I'm going to be doing a lot of ADSing and a lot of kind of like overall movement and stuff like that, I'm going to need some weapon recoil to go and make sure I stabilize my gun, so it's a lot easier to go and hit those headshots for Pistolier and for the weak point. You can see how like things are starting to come together now, all right? Now, what I can go ahead and do is we're talking about the survivability of her earlier, and you can add an extra layer of survival by running Secondary Fortifier, which is where you gain 1 overguard for every 100 damage dealt to an enemy's overguard, and you deal 8 times extra damage towards overguards. This means I can also go ahead and have very little issues against Xmas units and just absolutely mow them down. You don't have to go ahead and run that by all means. I'll go ahead and give you a couple of other Arcanes you can go ahead and run here. Cascadia Flare, but you have to go for a heat build, 480% damage. You go and run secondary Encumber if you're going for more a little bit of a hybrid critical and status. Whenever you go and proc a status, there's a 24% chance of proccing an extra status, and you go and run Galvanized Shot, which scales off multiple statuses, so you get even more damage off of that. You can go and do that. And then the other one is going to be Fortifier. This is secondary Enervate. This adds critical chance to weapons. If you ever run secondary Enervate, the odds are you don't need any other form of critical chance. This is going to apply and reset so quickly there's no point like scaling critical chance any further. This would be your only critical chance. This is what I'm saying. Whilst Yareli exists and while she's got this passive, this right now will be the biggest argument to be like, I'll just go and run this. And then it's like, yeah, but then you're better off a different runner and gunner. Can of worms. All right, I'm not trying to go and sell you it, but anyways, here's the build. Right, from there onwards, I can go and just use a melee slot here. Whatever melee slot you want to go and use is entirely up to you. I personally just go ahead and use the Praedos for parkour velocity. Since I'm running and gunning and I'm trying to go and get through tile sets nice and quickly, I go ahead and get a little bit of parkour velocity here. It's just a passive stat stick in the background. I'm not really melee in anyway, so why not just have something that I can go and cater towards? All right, now as for the focus skill, I'm going to be using Madarai. Madarai is mostly just because I'm looking for that little bit of extra damage so I can go and run things like Phoenix Talons. Since I am going to be using damage related weapons and weaponry as well, Void Strike's going to work really well here. So if I do want to go and get myself up to an extra 1000% damage from Void Strike, I can go ahead and do that as well. The other nice things about Madarai is you can go get things like Sling Strength, which I can go ahead and sling into the ground whilst I'm in my operator, get 40% ability strength. As I go back to my Warframe, this also procs as well, which also goes and gives me 50% casting speeds. So between this and this, I get 50% casting speed, 40% ability strength, and now whenever I go ahead and cast on my next ability or so forth, I'm going to be at a good spot to go ahead and get some extra rewards for it. Okay, so like my Norwich could go ahead and scale off that, which is fantastic, or my damage vulnerability or wherever else it may be. But ideally, I just like the Madarai because essentially the Void Strike and the Phoenix Talons, it works well with a runner and gunner. Now, as for companions, there's a lot of different companions you can also go ahead and run here, but I'm just going to tell you my favorite. Ideally, I could go ahead and run Primer with Die Rigger over here. That works really well. You could go ahead and run Adaza with the critical chance, additive critical chance to base on her Cat's Eye. This also kind of similar to Arcane Avenger. You can go and get out of that. You can go run Hounds for priming if you wanted to. You can go ahead and run things like Cheshire for loot rewards. You can go ahead and run Panzer for viral if you didn't run the Grendel's Nourish and you wanted to go and get some viral amplification. You can go and do that. There's a lot of different companions going to use, but the one that I want to go ahead and use is going to buff the idea of just running and gunning. So this is where I go ahead and use Worm Prime. Now what I like about Worm Prime is that if you the base shield on this thing is 600, but if you go ahead and put calculated redirection on, it gives you over 1200. Why is that important? Reinforced bonds. If I exceed over 1200 shields, then my fire rate is increased by 60%. What's really good about my fire rate being increased? Arcane Pistolier. I have unlimited ammo as long as I go ahead and hit those headshots and headshot kills. So as you can imagine, all of that's going to synergize quite nicely. What's also really nice is it's a critical chance and critical build, Tenacious Bonds. As long as my weapon has a critical chance over 50% on this bad boy, then I will gain a 120% final critical damage multiplier. That is right at the very end of your overall critical damage. This is just free critical damage. So I need to make sure that whatever weapon I have equipped on him, on the worm, needs to make sure that it has over 50% critical chance. For me, this is one that I use for like priming capabilities, but essentially I have the creeping bullseye in here, so I've got my over my 50%. All right, lovely stuff. Now with my worm, I'm not actually attacking because I don't have assault bonds. It's a really passive thing in the background, because I can also go and get things like Negate. Sentinel prevents status effects from applying to its owner once every 5 seconds. Now the only issue with that, as you can imagine, is if I've got the Merulina active, this isn't really something I typically need, but again, I like this scenario over here. Then I also have things like Guardian. They go ahead and drop my shields. This gives me my shields back, and this can also go and increase my maximum shields, again give me over shields, and it can also go and just help my shield regeneration a little bit quicker as well. Now any of these that are considered preset mods, because they've got this little symbol here, these all have essentially cooldowns on them. That's 10 seconds, that's 5 seconds, this is like 20 or 30 seconds, you just don't see it. Basically, if I go and kill an enemy with 3 or more unique status effects, which in my build I have, I can then go ahead and reset any companion ability cooldowns by 3 seconds. So these can come back really, really quickly. Status immunity and overall shield gain. As you can imagine, that's also going to synergize very nicely with what I'm doing for a little bit of running gun and material. Now, up next, we also got the Archon Shards. Let's go ahead and go over those really quickly. Sorry, I hope I'm not like rushing through the video. Forgive me, I just saw the time is quite a long video. So let's go over the Archon Shards. So to go and start things off with, you do not need the specific setup. There is a lot you can run here, so I will go and go over the alternatives in a moment. However, for me, I've gone with a little bit casting speed, just innate casting speed. It's more just for my Riptides. I just like to make sure I go and get that off a little bit quicker if I need to go ahead and get it off. But again, like I said, not overly a necessity, and if you don't want to go and use Riptide for creeping and nuking, you don't really need the casting speeds. Feel free to put whatever you want to in here, okay? Now, from there onwards, over here, I like to go and have maximum energy filled on spawn. This is just something that I typically go ahead and gravitate towards. If you want to go and use the mod preparation in her Exciter slot, because it's free to go ahead and put in there if you want to, then you can go ahead and do that, especially if you're riding Merulina. If you're not riding Merulina, then do consider that you can still be knocked down at the current moment. All right, but this is good. I can go and cycle my abilities and off I go. So if I enter a mission and go and hit Grendel's Nourish, any energy that I'm getting from there onwards is essentially now being multiplied by the Grendel's Nourish, so I'm getting a great return back. So even if I can just get that cast, I'm off to a good start. Now, this is why I'm talking about how I fix my energy in just 3 shards here, just 3. Don't even need to go ahead and run all 3. You could go ahead and get away with 2, but it depends on what you're doing. So first things first is I gave myself energy max. This is 150 flat energy max. Now here's the thing, she has really good energy, right? She's got a good amount of energy. If you go and use the prime flow on her, she gets an amazing amount of energy, like an awful lot. Now, if you're spamming Riptide quite often, then you would probably consider not running these and run the prime flow. You get like almost 800, 900 energy. But since that's an awful lot and I don't need that much, I'm better off just running 2 flat here, and then I complement and finish myself off with the very smaller version of Equilibrium. Now, Equilibrium is a mod that gives you 110% value on either of these, but this gives you a 30% value. This basically means whenever I go and pick up a health orb, I get 30% energy from that health orb, and if I pick up an energy orb, I also go and get 30% health from the energy orb. This is really good on Eximus units, which are going to be absolutely mowed down by our secondary fortifier with their bonus damage, but I can go ahead, whenever you go and kill an Eximus unit, you go ahead and get 2 health orbs and 1 energy orb guaranteed. All right, that's just guaranteed. So Equilibrium and Violet Archon Shards work really, really well and going towards it. So that's how I kind of fix what I was doing. This is my build. I just, you know, I've got a brand new secondary weapon. I want to go ahead and run it. I'm going to go and just jump on Yareli, mess about with some like critical build, and off I go. If I didn't run secondary Enervate, ideally, again, I know I've said it a few times this video, forgive me, secondary Enervate is the biggest counter to Yareli right now. I get it. So unless you don't want to go for this build and you would rather go for a different build like the Surgeon Blaze, Aqua Blaze build, or you want to go and do a group of nuke builds and you don't really care about the critical return, go for it. All right, but for me, this works, and it will work in EDAs, ETAs, it'll work in Differi Paradox, works in Steel Path. I've got a Yareli build. Jump on, kill things, get out, lovely stuff. Obviously in EDAs and ETAs, it's really gonna, and even Differi Paradox, it's really gonna dictate onto what secondary weapon is available for you. But the good thing is that you can always go ahead and just flex the overall arcanes. If you want to go and just change it to like primaries instead, you can just go and do that. All right, you just won't get much out of her passive, but it's still a runner and gunner. She'll still survive. You still got iframes, you still got damage vulnerability, you've still got utility, and you've still also got extra utility in creep and nuke. So she still works. All right, anyways, let's go and get some gameplay up on the screen here. And as you can go and see, for now, I'm going to be using that dual Coda Torxica, and you can go and see what this gameplay looks like. It's pretty effortless. My goal is going to be just lining up heads and just absolutely mowing them down. There shouldn't really have any issues. Like I said, if I do fall into issues, I've got things like Merulina to go ahead and bail me out with that huge amount of 4-second iframe. If I do need it, I can then flex over to operators, so for whatever. I've got status immunity, I've got viral debuff application because of the Nourish, I've got lots of energy return because of the Nourish. All of my, as you can see, like I've mostly got an awful lot of like energy in the bottom right, majority of times. So if I do want to go and spam Riptide here and maybe change away from the dual Torxica and go for a different secondary weapon that can maybe like group and nuke a little bit better, then you could do that. That's completely fine. If you want to go for like, I don't know, like maybe Adamos Incarnon with its its evolved form where it can go ahead and get like that little bit of like suction towards it. I think it's Incarnon that does that. Anyways, so yeah, there's lots of room here. There's lots of room, all right? But the main thing is it's a run and gunner, and it's trying to cater towards critical running and gunning. But yes, as you can go and see, as much as I want to go ahead and like her, I do have my gripes with a couple of issues with her, but I'm not complaining. I'm just trying to be observant, and I'm also trying to be logical about what I'm essentially saying I dislike with. So I'm gonna go and bring you guys back over here. Anyways, I don't think there's much. I probably brought you back, guys. I probably brought you back anyways, but not much else to go and say here. She gets the job done. That's all I need her to go and do. Get in, get out, get my rewards, lovely stuff. All right. That's going to be Yareli. How are you guys finding Yareli right now? And if there are any changes or anything that you guys would like to see added to her, what would you guys go ahead and change? What would you guys go and add to her? But as always, that's enough yap from me. It's been a long video. Thank you guys so much for watching today. If you did like it, please go and hit the like button. If you are new to the channel, consider subscribing. If you think there's anyone else out there who would enjoy a build like this, or they want some inspiration to go and work with and then change things, consider sharing the video with a friend. But as always, I will catch you guys again in the next video. Take it easy, guys.